Now that we've finished with Lab2C, we have two ways to deal with it. We can say right mouse click and say delete, and if we say OK, it takes it out of our workspace area here, but it's not out of the workspace directory. In fact, if we want to get it back, we can say File, Import, Existing Projects into Workspace, say Next, and say Browse, and over here just say OK, and there it is, and we can bring it back. And it's that simple. But if we want to get rid of it completely, we'd say right mouse click, delete, check this box, and if we say OK now, it's going to completely take it out of the workspace directory, which means if we want it back, we have to go to embed, export it again, and go through that whole procedure to bring it back. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to leave it there. We're going to right mouse click, we're going to say delete, and just say OK, knowing that we can get it back at any time. The next step we're going to do is get Lab2B and bring it in and do some analysis and debugging with it. Now that we're back at embed, one of the things you're going to find is that if we try to download any of these files to the Freedom K64, it's not going to work. It's not going to allow us to download after we've used MCU Expresso. What you have to do is just disconnect the USB cable from your computer, plug it back in, and then you will be able to download again. So as you switch between these, there are some things that you have to be aware of. At this point, what we're going to do is we're going to right mouse click, we're going to export Lab2B now to MCU Expresso. If we recall, we have to change the default here to MCU Expresso. We have to say export. Again, we're going to save file, and when it's ready, we're going to click, double click, and again we're going to go to Documents, MCU Expresso, we're going to go to Workspace, we're going to slide this one down and slide Lab 2 now into here, and you can see that Lab 2C is still here. And once it's here, now we can either import this one or import this one while we're in MCU Expresso. Now that we've exported Lab2B, it's time to import it. So we're going to say File, Import. We're going to say Existing Projects into Workspace. We're going to say Next. We're going to say Browse, and it's going to go right to the Workspace directory, so we're just going to say OK. We have both Lab2B and Lab2C here, but we only want to bring in Lab2B, so we're just going to uncheck this, and then we're going to say Finish. At this point, we have Lab2B here. We can open it up. We can double click here as we did before, and our program is in place. Binaries. And once we've done that, we're going to hit the little blue bug button here. And again, we have to make sure this is checked. And we say OK. And at this point, we're ready to do our debugging. We're going to switch over here to the debug screen to make our life a little easier. So you can see I brought up the PuTTY screen. And because we are in debug perspective, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Window, Show View, Variables. And one of the things you're going to find is when you take a look at arrays, they will not display properly when you're using MCU Expresso unless you actually tell it that it's an array. So we're going to click on Name here, left mouse click, and right mouse click, and go down here to say Display as Array. Now our starting index is 0, and we can see that max is 80, so there's 80 elements 0 through 79, but the length I'm going to put in here is 15, because I'm not going to use up all of those 80 characters. I'm just going to use up the first 15, so for demonstration purposes. So we're going to hit OK. Now if I open this up, we can see our array here has elements 0 through 14, or 15 elements, and the values in here are random, as are our integers and any other variables that you're going to use, because variables, arrays, and so forth are put into random access memory, or RAM, and RAM, when you first power it up, has random values in it. So the first question that's asked is there a predefined value for all elements in an array? And the answer for that is no. One of the standard ways to do debugging is to actually set a breakpoint. Now, for instance, if we look here at line 24, to set a breakpoint on line 24, we just double click. That creates a ball, which means it's going to run until it hits this and stop and be in trace mode. If we take this ball out, it just runs normally. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set a breakpoint on line 24. We're going to hit run, and it's going to drop out at this point. And after this, we can either step into or step over for all the rest of the instructions that we want to do at this point. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a step over, and all of this is ghosted, which means it's waiting for input from over here. So I'm going to type in a W, and at this point it's taken our keyboard input of W, put it into name of 0, and it's saying while name of 0 is not equal to R. So let's again open up this window. Let's take a look at what we have in our array here, and we can see there's our W. And so what we're going to do is we're going to step over, and it says while it's not equal to that, it's going to add 1 to our I. Right now I is 0, which is element 0, as we can see here. And so if we step over this, I is now going to be 1, so it's going to deal with element 1. And again, when we hit the trace button here, or step over button, it's ghosted here, which means it's waiting for input. So I'm going to do WZ, and right now it's saying if name of I, which is name of 1, which is Z here, which is name of 1 here, is it equal to a 7F, and it's not. So if we do a step over, it's going to go back, and it's going to say while that value is not equal to that, which it's not, it's going to then add 1 to I to make it the next value, which is 2, and then it's going to wait for input again. Now this time I'm going to hit a delete key, which is our backspace. I click over here, hit a backspace character, and what's going to happen is this time it's going to say is name of I, which is this guy, is it a 7F? Now right now these are being displayed in decimal and ASCII, but I can click here, right mouse click here, and change the number format to hexadecimal, so it'll compare with what I've got here. And we can see that this number that I typed in, which is a backspace or delete, is actually a 7F. So if I go ahead one more, it's going to decrease the index from 2 to 1, and then it's going to decrease it again from 1 to 0. Because we have these values in here. We have the W, we have the Z, we have the delete key, and what we want to do is position ourselves back here so we can start putting in more characters. So let's trace ahead again. So it's not equal to carriage return, so it's going to add 1 more, and I is now going to be 1, so it's going to be dealing with element 1. It's going to then wait until I type in a character. Now at this time I'm going to hit in, over here, I'm going to hit in a return key. Now if you take a look here, the return key, the enter key is a 13 decimal or a quote \R. So it's going to say is it a 7F? It's not a 7F, so it's going to go back here and it's saying while name of I is not equal to this, but it is. So when we trace again, it's going to drop out, and right now we've got an R sitting here. So what we're going to do is we're going to trace again, and we're going to see that that R is now going to be a 0 because our string is W followed by a null, and a null is a quote \0 quote. There it is. Now if we take a look here, we can see that X is 39.